I was listening to some hip hop upstairs, and that was definitely one of the last songs that I was listening to before I came down.
And I'm sitting here listening to the Bluegrass Gourds version of Gin and Juice. And you, fine listener, are sitting there listening to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me from the OG streets of Utah, give it up for Sejohn Sarowick.
I was just thinking, it's a good thing I wasn't doing anything very precarious over here when you called me.
I mean, that's the thing. I could always just stop it and then we start over again.
Yeah.
But it was just too good to catch you on tape saying, I was listening to hip hop because I'm so hard.
I like your impression of me. I really do.
I
feel like it might be bleeding in a little bit from what you were just listening to. I'm gonna put that out there. That there's
the Novocaine also probably helps. So just as a disclaimer for this episode, I am fresh off a visit to the dentist. And
nice.
So if I sound off or odd, that's the reason why.
So for the first time ever in the recording of the show, we'll both be a little high. So let's do this thing.
Oh, well, I didn't have any gas or anything. They just Novocained me.
They just put a substance into my system that can definitely mess with my chemical makeup.
I mean, like, I like that you think that this is the first time I've been a little bit high during an episode of the Say Report.
I just meant both of us at the same time. That's all I meant. All right.
Oh, what? Oh man, maybe I'm a little more affected than I thought. Anyway, welcome to the Say Report. And I need to start. It's related to that dentist visit. Two things. Thing one is my dental appointment was at 3:00, so I had to go to my boss today and tell him I have a dentist appointment tonight. I have to leave at 2:30.
Right.
And
yeah.
it went fine. And that leads me to your reaction also being nonplussed. Maybe my father was right that only the Deckers think that 2:30 and 2:30 are fucking hilarious.
Okay. All right.
Because that's it. Because I felt like I was going to say to my boss, I'm leaving today at 2:30 to go to the dentist. And that being like, I mean, that's just rich for comedy as far as I'm concerned.
I have never been prouder of my stone cold reaction to a bad pun.
Well, that's the thing is that, like, so instead, I decided to get ahead of it, and I'm like, we're both adults. We're both educated men. We're both intelligent. I have to leave to go to the dentist at 2:30 today. And he goes, that's fine. And I'm like, okay, good, thank you. And I get the hell out of there before any sort of bad pun could happen. No, because I said 2:30, but it's just, it's so close to sounding like 2:30.
I get the joke, Devon.
I know you get the joke. I was just so like, this also, I need to like just be honest. I laughed way too hard when I saw him drinking Diet Root Beer. I didn't know such a thing existed.
You lead a marvelous, wonderless life.
I do lead a marvelous, wondrous life. I think I talked about it on the show before. I have a thing too. Don't let me forget thing two, because we just resolved all the cliffhangers. It's not time to start new cliffhangers.
It's exactly the time to start new cliffhangers.
But
yeah.
In addition to a marvelous, wondrous life, I got my hair cut yesterday. Well, actually, I got them all cut. But
oh no. See, this is what Novocaine does to you.
Apparently. No, I've just set myself into this tract where I'm like living every single pun that has ever been said. That's what this week has been for me. It's been a punishment, really.
All right. Can I quit this show? Is it too late for me to quit this show?
I mean, I feel like we've gotten to a point where at any moment you're allowed to pull the plug on your involvement in the Say Report. We've gotten to 100 episodes. But no, I just feel like I've lived every single pun that's ever happened this week. But I went to go get my hair cut. And I don't know if I talked about it on the show, but I'll talk about it now. And if I did, sorry for the reiteration. But the last time I got my hair cut, there was a woman who works in the same plaza where my haircuttery is,
Okay.
and she is handicapped. She actually has a handicap sticker, so it's not like one of those you're parking in a handicap spot, what a jerk moments. I want to preface that. What she is doing in her car with the handicap like hanger is parking in two handicap spots. She is just pulling up on the white line so that her car is in two spots.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I can
man.
hear it in your voice
Ugh.
how that makes you feel.
Yeah, no, it's like the worst. It's the worst situation ever. Not made all the more not made any better by the fact that it's fucking cliche. To, to be to be a disenfranchised person in some fashion, and so doubling up on your privilege in another fashion is like the worst kind of like sitcom cliche you could possibly be in everyday life, like of all of the things. So I'm disgusted by the bad writing more than anything
Oh
else.
yeah. Well, and just for like the record, I was watching Seinfeld at the time. So it felt just So everybody working where I get my hair cut is complaining about this woman and how she always does this. Every day she comes in and she takes up two handicap spots with her car, and they're sick of it, but none of them wants to do anything about it.
Yeah,
So
of course,
it's
of
it's
course.
the week before December. I've been watching Seinfeld, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do something about it. So I write a little note that says, "Taking up two spots is naughty, not nice. Love, Santa." And I just pop that underneath her windshield, thinking that's fairly innocuous, right?
Yeah,
There's no threat there. It's just like, hey,
it's
heads
like the
up, you're kind of being a jerk.
it's the lamest vigilantism I've ever heard of.
Well,
That's
what am
good.
I supposed? It's
No, I
safe
love it.
vigilantism. Let's be
Mm,
honest. I could
I
have
love
gone
it.
all Frank Castle on it, but no. I just wrote a note being like, Santa would put coal down your stocking for what you're doing.
So shove it up your stocking. Love
So
Santa.
that's what I do. I wrote a nastier one that was very George Costanza esque, and then I'm like, no, you're too bad. I'm gonna just go with the Santa one. And that's it. So I just go. And I've not thought about that note that I put on that car since it happened, right?
Hmm.
Like it was in the moment, and then life went on for Devon Decker. I walk into the barber shop yesterday, and all three of the people who were there when I wrote the note, and they saw me write the note, right? It's not like it was a secret that I'm the one who wrote this note, are like, you got us in so much trouble. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And they're like, that note you left? I'm like, I don't, what note are you talking about? Now, I would like to preface, I remember the note. I'm Devon Decker. I have a long memory. But the best thing to do in a situation of you're in trouble for something
Denied,
any
denied, denied.
Sejohn, that's why we do a podcast together and you are my brother. Because deny is how you handle that situation. So I'm just like, so I keep denying, and I'm like, guys, I remember the note, but like, this is what I hope you did. And they're like, oh yeah, don't worry, we didn't sell you out. We said we don't know. I mean, it's not like nobody's gonna be offended by the fact that you're taking up two handicap spots. Anybody who could come by and see that and think, well, I'm gonna write a little note because seriously, lady.
Wow. I'm very. So did
She
she?
contacted the barbershop's owner saying it must have been one of the girls who work there. And they're like, no, none of us did it. And they're like, well, if it wasn't that, then it was one of your clientele. Because apparently this woman has a problem with the clientele of the barbershop. Which, let me tell you, is pretty swank. I'm not going to use the name here to protect the innocent, but it's the kind of place, it's called a barbershop and spa.
Yeah.
I get a
It's
hot towel on my face and a
right.
straight razor shave at the end. Like, it's not like the barbershop from Barbershop. There's not a
Fair
guy
enough.
coming in selling like clothes and stuff from underneath his clothes. And then they tell me she complained to the owner of the property about receiving the note, saying it was physical and emotional abuse. Someone writing and leaving a note for her, saying that it was a little rude that she's parked in 2 handicapped spots.
Okay. At any point, did anybody ask her, did you park in 2 handicap
No,
spots?
apparently not. Apparently, well, she might also be smart, right? I don't want to discount this woman's intelligence. She's probably not offering the fact that I'm parked in 2 handicap spots.
Well, right, but if anybody asks the content of the note, like your story's gonna fall apart pretty quick when they say, "Sounds like somebody was reprimanding you for parking in 2 spots." Did you?
Oh, dude.
Like,
Also, she does it all the time. So, like, if
right.
she went to somebody and said that, they could come out and be like, "Well, you're parked in 2 spots right now." So, like, it makes sense that people could be offended. And also, not to be like, I have a reason why. We have a handicap placard on our car for my father, right? He has brittle bones and he walks with a cane, and he parks in handicap spots. So also, coming from the point where you're taking up a spot for somebody who might need it
Right.
is why I'm picking up my pen and pad of paper.
We are warriors for common decency, Devon.
So it was just fun, like that whole thing happened. But then there was a new girl there who was not there for this initial interaction, and she left like halfway through my haircut, and the place turned into the barbershop from Barbershop as they all complained about her and how she is no good and she is ruining the mood in the shop. Like, I feel like I can't be
man.
myself. And, like, they're all telling me, like, I can't do anything to stop this girl. I can write a note for social
I
decency.
can write a note, but we all saw how that went.
Like, but also to the point is, there's, like, this older dude who cuts hair there. I've never heard him talk, right? Like, he usually just sits there, keeps to himself. He was getting in on it because he's like, we are not prisoners here. We are free, and we have the right to do what we do. And she comes in here acting like what we do is wrong. And I'm like, oh, wow. Wow, I didn't realize you were so passionate about this.
What a weird way to start policing people. Like, what the hell could you have been saying to these people to upset them so much? It's a fucking like barbershop, like.
So what she
like,
is, so I'll give a little bit.
Any type of facility like that, barbershop or salon or anything in between, has always been like a safe place for people to go and unload their shit. Like that's like one of the biggest things about those places.
Right. So it was cool for them. Like, it's cool that with me, they feel comfortable enough to unload their shit to me. Like, it's not my time to talk because I don't really have much shit to unload. I have a podcast for that. So what this girl is, she's a new receptionist. And one of them called and said, I had to reschedule something. Would you mind contacting my client who's coming in at 5:30 and seeing if they can come in earlier? And she's like, why are you asking me to do your job for you? It's like,
because you all work in the same fucking shop.
not only that, you're the receptionist. That's your job. Contacting a client about rescheduling an appointment falls squarely in your box of responsibility.
Gross.
So, I mean, that's the thing. If they didn't have, like, a legitimate complaint, like, if they were just like, I don't like her attitude, but they were pointing out moments where it's like, well, she's a receptionist, and you're asking her to do the receptionist duties, and she's acting like, no, how dare you ask me to do what is required of this job?
This is beneath me. Well, I hate to tell you, but it actually all falls on you, so...
So that was my marvelous, wonderful. I left there in such high spirits because it was just so fun.
Because you're a lord of chaos and you just bask in all of that.
A little bit, yeah. I might be one of those like empath vampires who like feed off emotions.
I feed off of the misery of others.
Delicious. I feel so powerful. Even now, I feel my power grow. No, it was just like a great experience. And then back to thing two. As I'm in the dentist's office, the not the hygienist, right? I think that's what it's called. Not the actual dentist, but the hygienist, like his assistant.
Because dentists don't have nurses; they have hygienists.
Right.
Right.
She's working on the temporary like tooth that's going to go in my mouth as I wait for her crown. And it's just like, what would be a funny scene in the movie is if like she put her phone number in this weird like temporary crown and she's like, I gave you my number. And then like you see the guy like looking in the mirror trying to like get the digits
Oh
off the
God.
tooth. I liked it. It was just like this thing that flashed into my mind. And there's a reason why that flashed into my mind, but I've been talking for the last 16 minutes. So, Sejohn, please have the floor.
Oh, but I really liked our new segment, Devon pitches romantic comedies. Oh man. Well, somebody's gonna make new
It can
Hallmark
be called
movies.
Tooth Hurdy. Oh,
Oh.
shit! I brought it back, Sejohn!
Well, so there's no clean segue at all into this, but essentially one of the big things this week for me was Devin mentioned on our family chat that we have amongst all the Say reporters that The Messenger was coming to PS4 this week. And so it wasn't until what, Tuesday of this week that it
It
came
came out
out?
on Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, Tuesday rolled around and I had been weighing the pros and cons of getting in on this thing because I knew that Devin had played through it already a year and a half ago at this point, right? Like
About a year ago.
a year ago?
No,
All
no,
right.
no,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it didn't come out until August. I played it a year ago because it was at PAX East. And that's when I fell
Huh.
in love with the Messenger. But then
Yeah.
it didn't come out till like August.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's something that's already been, that we've already gone through, and it's not that I don't like not like retreading things. It's just there's it's rarely it's rarely worth me bringing things back up if I feel like there's like not much for me to really grasp onto, right? And I just haven't been sure about the messenger for me for since we started talking about it, and it's not, and this is nothing against like the game or its quality, and we'll get to that, but like there's it's not the style of game that I grew up on, like that I live in. You know what I mean? Like the closest I think to something like this would be like a Donkey Kong Country, because we talked about last week of it being like of the Nintendo platformers, it being on the more difficult side. And that was about as difficult as I ever dared to get. With the Ninja Gaiden stuff, like I played them, but it was never good at them. I think I've admitted that before. I've never been able to ever like truly complete one or anything like that. Especially not, is it the first one where you have to go through it like six times or
Oh,
whatever
well,
it is?
the first one where you go through it, but then in the final level, if you die against the boss, it sends you back to the beginning of that level.
Right. Yeah. Something
It's
like,
a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
jerk.
Yeah.
Ninja Gaiden, the first Ninja Gaiden is a jerk that I am very happy to say I have completed.
Yeah. And so there was this hesitancy on whether or not I was going to pick it up this week is the moral of that story. So like trying to figure out like if it was going to be worth like dropping $20. It's not expensive, but also it's not cheap. Like
No, but that
it's
$20 could go towards something you might actually have an interest in. I completely understand.
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like food.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you're
that
the
sort
one
of
who
thing.
said that you were catching up and becoming more of a nerd again. So I
Yeah.
was just trying to offer you an olive branch.
Yeah, so I thought about it and I went and I pulled it up and then I promptly spent $20 on three other games instead.
That's fine. I got a
picked up-
handful of games for PS4 this week for
Yeah,
$5.
yeah, they had their big sale this week, and a lot of stuff I had actually already of the things I was interested in, I actually already own in some capacity. But what I didn't own was I didn't own SteamWorld Heist, which I had played because I fucking love SteamWorld Dig. I play SteamWorld Dig just on a whim. Like I play it almost like a mobile game whenever I'm just bored and just want something that I know will amuse me and shut my brain off. So like so as much as I've dug into SteamWorld Dig and completed it a handful of times, I never got around to actually personally owning SteamWorld Heist. After I played it a couple of times with a friend of mine, Quincy. I don't need to hide who that was.
No,
Like,
you could tell. You could tell.
yeah.
We're not protecting
Uh,
him. He's not innocent.
But after playing it a few times, back in the uh, back in the Super Kenshi days, I never got around to actually owning it, and so it's on the mega sale right now. It's like 60% off or something like that. So it was only $5. So I snagged that, and I've been digging deep into that, right? And then along with that, I also picked up Drawful. Always good to grab a party game when it's on sale. Drawful 2, actually, to be specific. And then the other thing was I'm never gonna say it right. Panarium. I think I might have actually said it right.
Yeah,
Have you heard of
Panarian.
this?
I know Panarian.
The one that's
I've
about
never played it, but I know
the kid
it.
at the circus.
Yeah.
Um, so it's this ridiculous bullet hell game, and like the point is it's all bullet hell no game essentially. Like the levels don't even scroll. You're on a standstill screen, and there's just a bunch of shit coming at you, and you have goals like collect the flags or kick the barrels or whatever. So you've got to jump around and do these goals while they're throwing a bunch of weaponry and shit at you, and it's super fucking fun, right? And so I'm playing through this game and I'm trying to figure out who it was that made this because like it feels so good. It feels so tight. It feels so much like the kind of game that I wouldn't have thought I would have enjoyed, but it was $2 and I've been kind of staring at it like and I'm so glad that I bought it. So it turns out it's by this company, this little unknown company called Devolver Digital.
Oh, this little unknown company called Devolver Digital,
Yeah.
the
So
publishers of The Messenger.
so I just thought, man, okay, if this is going to be the kind of like the if this is going to be the way that I fall in love with again a genre that I'm not a huge fan of, nor do I think I was ever really that good at playing. Like, which probably the two go hand in hand. The fact that I never felt like I could get through bullet hell games, always made it kind of hard for me. It's part of the reason that I haven't done the deep dive into Cuphead yet. Is as cool as that game looks, it's just not a kind of game that I'm used to.
Well,
So
I'm gonna just time out for a second, Zach Morris style. You're the fucking victor in that one. The announcement that Cuphead's coming to the Switch after
yeah,
it was an Xbox Windows exclusive, you win for
yeah.
waiting. You son of a bitch.
Yeah, so now I'm gonna finally get to experience that, and that's gonna be glorious. I'm super excited that about that announcement as well.
Oh, time in.
So yeah, so I just thought, well, if this is the kind of shit that they can do with this type of game, and I'm not a huge fan of, I'm just gonna go buy the Messenger. And so it turns out I went and I bought the Messenger as well this week.
Dude, that, I gotta tell you, good fucking storytelling. Because I was so convinced, oh, Sejohn didn't buy the Messenger. I'm sad.
Well, so part of it is that I didn't really think about who had made it or like where it was coming from. I've been focusing on what the game looked like to me, and there was so much that we had talked about how the advertising didn't do that game justice and all this stuff too, right? And so there's always been this little piece of me that's been kind of nagging at me that like the only thing you really know about this game is from the advertising and a couple of like YouTube videos that dude's made of them trying out levels and stuff before it had even come out. Like you mentioned, like the pack stuff and things like that. So like I just bought in and I just did it. And I gotta say, I made it through. Let's see, I made it through the jungle, and I'm in
You're
what's
in
the level after the
Halloween
jungle?
Grotto,
I only
aka
just
Wingsuit Alley.
yeah, I just got the wingsuit, so that's what just happened. Is I literally just got the wingsuit, got to the next screen, and there was a secret entrance into a pendant area, and like could not get through that pendant area. Tried for like 30 minutes before we recorded, and I was like, all right, I'm backing away from this so that I can go and take care of some other business. Um, and yeah, man, like I gotta say, again, not my style of game. So I'm not falling in love with it like you and I think even Zach has talked about how much he fell in love with that game, right? Like I I'm enjoying my time with it more than I ever thought I would have. You know, part of the reason I hadn't bought it till now is because I was skeptical about it, whether or not I'd feel it was worth the money. And I definitely feel that. I definitely feel it was worth dropping $20 on to get in on this game, especially because I have a little bit of a sense of that there is a big thing that happens at some point later on in the game, and it's a whole other experience that I can't wait to try. But until then, I am playing in this style that I'm just not. It's not my bag. It's really not. But the game is so much more than its gimmick, and that's something that I think is really that is something that I should have realizing that it was Devolver Digital making it. Is that the gimmick is always something that always gets thrown up front in marketing, you know, and so the idea that you're playing in this style and then it becomes that style is what that whole game was sold on. Meanwhile, there's a whole other level to this game that feels almost Undertale-ish in its handling of like the story and the way that like you kind of know how the game works. Like the second I walked into a shop, I understood. All right, I'm gonna get to upgrade and all this sort of stuff. You know, like the mechanics all kind of are really soothing and nostalgic as well. And so there's so much more to it than just this gimmick of like the art style change and the play style change, right? Like is wild. It's really, 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 really well done. And so like I am I'm interested to see how much I get into it because this could become one of those things where in like 3 days I realize I played it for 4 hours and didn't stop. You know, right now I'm doing it in probably about 30-minute, 45-minute bursts, and then it's getting on my nerves a little bit, but that's okay. I walk away and then I come back later and suddenly I'm able to get through wherever I was stuck in like 5 minutes.
Cool. Very cool. I also rebought The Messenger because that's how I support like an indie game that I care about. Is why I bought Shovel Knight 7 times.
Yeah.
Because I want Yacht Club games to succeed. I want them
Yeah.
to be able to make more games. And I'm super excited for their Ninja game that I'm going to get to see at PAX East next week.
Oh yeah, man.
But, I mean, Ninja game, I don't know that it's a Ninja game, but that's what the GIF leads me to believe. So I rebought The Messenger. And if you listen to our mini review, which I had kind of hoped we could just do a follow-up mini review when you finish The Messenger, if you finish The Messenger, we'll table it for that. This is still a good conversation. My biggest complaint about that game is that the Switch was not the right platform for it.
No. Yeah.
And playing it on the PS4, it like just validates that belief so much.
Yeah.
Because the controls are so much tighter. It is constructed for like having a D-pad and the buttons right there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it is the better platform to play The Messenger on.
See, and that's good to know because one of the things that I was feeling about it is the controls. They do what I expect them to do, but there's this weightlessness to your character. I named my messenger Chet. So there's this weightlessness to Chet.
Oh, I just call him The Messenger because I think that's hilarious.
No,
I like to believe that that's his name.
I named mine Chet. So there's this like weightlessness to him, right? And so he doesn't really have much resistance or anything when he's in the air. So there's no real feeling of like when he hits the ground, you don't feel like oof, like you don't feel like a moment of him stopping when he hits the ground to like catch himself, right? Like you can pretty much drop and go. But there's also this weird slowness to him in the way that he moves when he's on the ground. Like when he's in the air, he seems to be like a leaf, but when he's on the ground, he seems to be like a rock in a lot of weird ways. And I get that that's just part of like once I get that feeling into me and I'm able to actually move around a little bit better, like that'll all make a little bit more sense. But it's one of the things that's catching me up in some of the bigger areas where right now where you're supposed to be doing some of these like aerial moves to get across to like secret areas and things like that is I keep kind of misjudging his weight in a lot of places in both ways. Like when he's in the air, I keep thinking he's going to do things because I have this feeling that he's going to be heavier than he is, and on the ground he sometimes moves a little bit slower than I expect him to, so I'm jumping too early and things like that. So it's interesting to me that you said that these controls actually feel even better on the PS4 because I almost don't want to know what they feel like on the Switch then because I don't think they're bad. I do think they're tight. I just don't. I'm not used to them yet.
So what I've been doing, a friend of mine, Amy, who used to work at GameStop with Dale, she also rebought it on the PS4.
Yeah.
And I challenged her to a platinum race because we're both going to platinum this game, but it would just be fun to see who could do it first.
Sure.
And her response, which I took as a confirmation of we're in a competition, was I already have 8 trophies before I had even started.
Yeah.
So my response was, oh, I'll catch up. And I've been catching up, and I've been streaming my little exploits on my Fox Zero channel and having a good time with it. But there's a thing. So you know who Corbel is, right? Because I'm sure you've died.
Yes. Yeah. I'm only at 10 deaths right now, though.
Oh, congratulations. So he says those like pithy little remarks when you pass away in the game.
Yeah.
Have you gotten, if anyone's watching, feel free to blame that one on input lag?
No, but I know that one exists in there because it's one of the most talked about ones from images from that game when it first came out. But I have not seen it myself yet.
Okay, so that exists. That is an existing screen. And on the Switch, it was frustrating because...
this is why I know, because you and I have had
I complained about it because inputs would get swallowed up by the Switch.
Right.
There was legitimately a moment where I died and got the input lag on the PS4, and I'm like, I can't do that though. Like, input lag is virtually non-existent on the PS4 version. And I don't
Sure.
know if it's because I'm playing on my 1 millisecond refresh rate monitor with this one, or I'm not even on my PS4 Pro. I'm on my original PS4, like my
Yeah.
fat model. But it's
Yeah.
still like, when I hit the jump button, he jumps. So
Yep.
any mistake in that game feels like it's on me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. And I think that's one of the most important things about these kind of like angering platformers that are out there, right? Like the ones that kind of feed off of trolling like the user is as much as they have to troll you, when you die, you have to feel like it wasn't the game's fault but yours because there's a difference between like the game catching you off guard and you feeling really cool for getting through it and the game catching you off guard and just killing you. At that point you want to stop, right?
right, you want to feel like if I had done something differently, I could have succeeded.
Exactly.
That keeps you engaged with the game. The game being like, oh, and fuck you. You're like, well, then fuck you.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
but because I'm going for trophies, because there were no trophies on the Switch, there's a trophy later on in the game. You have to go through a dark cave,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you get an item that allows you to see in the dark. And it's basic video game logic. You just have like a circle of light around you. There's a trophy for doing that cave without that circle of light item. And I always was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, playing on the Switch, I'm like, this game is just working so much against me that I don't think I'll ever be able to achieve that. And that bothers me.
Yeah.
Last night I did it in 11 minutes. I just
Hmm.
like sat down and I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this dark cave. I haven't played the game in about a year, but I'm going to try to get through it and see what happens. And I did it in 11 minutes. And that is
Nice.
because every time I'm like, that is because I felt like the game was working with me, not against me. And
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing I can say. Also, in terms of accessibility, maybe this stuff existed before, but I feel like it didn't, just based on what the conversation in video games and accessibility has been over the last year. There's a part in the game, you're not there yet, small spoiler, where you need to listen for music and go
Hmm.
down the path that has the music there.
Right.
They have, I hate stuff like that because usually I don't play games with sound, right?
Yeah.
It's just not what I do. You don't do it. You have Spotify on in the background. But then, in addition to people who choose not to listen to the game's music, there are people who are deaf, who cannot
Right.
hear. So a puzzle like that is instantly like gatekeeping for somebody who's not in control of that, right?
Right. Right.
And I think about when Castlevania Requiem came out, there's a puzzle in Symphony of the Night where you have to listen for clicks as you hit cogs in the wall. And
Mm.
everybody, like, it sucks that they couldn't have added some sort of visual cue for this in 2018.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, and I mean, just look at, just take a step back and look at anything ever having to do with color blindness in games. And
Yeah,
we finally have started to do something about that over the last like 10 years, but that still leaves 30 years of games before that where color blindness was never considered.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah,
and it's just a thing that exists. So I'm playing through the messenger and I get to that section and I'm like, all right, I have to turn up my sound now. I haven't had my sound on. And then as I get close to the area, there's like a shine on the right door. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That is awesome that they've added this accessibility. And
yes,
maybe it was there before and I didn't notice it, or maybe they've added it with like all the patches they've done to the game. But it just
yeah.
made me so happy that they took the time to do something that made the game more accessible for all.
Yeah, I gotta say there's a real feeling of love in this game, both for the game itself and for the people playing it. You know, like and again, I should not have been surprised once I realized who it was that was doing it. I think that it's hard for me to think right now of another company besides Devolver that really kind of came to fruition after like when video games became video games as we know them today. You know what I mean? Like after the N64 and you know after the Xbox had come out, and so now we kind of knew who all the big players were going to be for the next decade and a half. Like there's not really a company that still exists today that came to fruition then that is just just doing good stuff. You know what I mean? Like consistently good stuff year after year. Usually they get bought up by some outside company that for lack of a better term, runs them into the
Nash,
ground.
Electronic Arts, or
Yeah,
Activision.
yeah. Like they come in and they just take over these smaller companies and then just run them into the ground and move on. Devolver is one of those ones that has been making big games since the beginning, but has somehow been able to still maintain their own little indie status when they want to do these things. They started off as a serious Sam company, right? Like when
Yes,
they first started,
Jesus.
like you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then not even the original. Like there were 3 or 4 Serious Sam's games before they got in on them, and then all they did was they started off producing the remakes, and then eventually made about what, like 3 or 4 on their own, or not on their own, but new ones, new titles at least. And then from there, they finally got to do some new stuff, right? But Devolver has been something that I've always kind of found myself falling in love with. One of their first big independent ones was Hotline Miami, which God blew me fucking away when I saw it, and like. Hotline Miami was the first time I ever played a game that was troubling to me, but enjoyed it so much that I couldn't bring myself to like critique it. It came out at just the right point in my like college career where I could have been really like the shitty video game college nerd about it and really kind of torn apart some of the aspects of that series that are problematic. I mean, like it's hard to deny it even as a fan. Like there are definitely there's weird shit in those games, in the Hotline Miami games that uh, honestly viewed by an outsider, somebody that's not in on the idea of that game or in on video games in general, could see that game as part of the problem in a lot of
Well,
ways.
yeah,
And
especially that's the issue with satire, because a
right,
lot of
right,
it
right.
it's satirizing those problematic things about action movies in the 80s and
Yeah.
video games throughout history.
Right.
But like those are also the ones that become the big beacons for people who don't understand that no, we're trying to shine a light on these problems.
Yeah, and so maybe the reason why that never really happened with Hotline is because they had kind of cut their teeth on the Serious Sam games and knew how to handle satire in a way that didn't draw negative attention, but instead it became one of the biggest hits of the year, you know? And so like looking at that, looking at Hotline Miami, looking at there's just all sorts of like weird little like indie games that they've done that I've just fallen in love with. I mentioned Panarium earlier that I didn't even realize was them when I bought it, and I've been enjoying the hell out of that. Um the big one for me though is a couple of years ago they did a Stranger Things adventure game style like ripoff. It's not a Stranger Things game, but it's hard to deny that it's very much influenced by it. I think it came out less than a year after
Yeah,
Stranger Things
I'm trying
premiered.
to think of the name of it because I can see
Stories
it.
Untold.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's awesome. It is, I mean, even if you never play it, just go. There's a couple of guys that play through it online, and it's all adventure game like there's not much to it. There in terms of mechanics. Like there's a puzzle element to each chapter. It comes out in 4 chapters. There's a puzzle element to each chapter. Each puzzle is unique on its own, but you realize pretty quickly that every story has something to do with the other. And then the twist at the end is pretty cliche in like its 80s like horror story like esque ending. And so the story is good, but that's not the thing that draws you to it. What actually drew me to it is the puzzles are amazing, the concepts are amazing. So like the very first episode, for instance, is this like Zork style text adventure, but you're playing it in a 3D world of somebody sitting down and playing this Zork style adventure. So like you're typing on a computer to control the guy on screen typing on the computer to control the game, and then like things are happening around him as you play, and it's just like a super bizarre concept, but the way that it comes to fruition in the game is just beautiful and amazing, right? And then the next one's completely different. It's nothing like that. So like there's this it's fucking crazy. And I also think it's one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen because there's not much to it. There's not much going on. They're basically able to save a lot of space in terms of like, what we can do to render all of these things on screen. So it's rendered just meticulously. Like it's beautiful how good it looks. So especially like somebody like you, Devon, who's got like a 4K monitor, like just look up like a YouTube video of that thing in HD and just watch a couple of minutes of it because it's fucking wild. And they put 4 whole chapters out of it that were pretty phenomenal. So like I shouldn't again to get back to the original point. Like I should not have hesitated once I realized who was behind the messenger and the kind of love that they have for when they make a game that is especially one that is one of their darlings. You can feel it in every aspect of the game.
Yeah. And bonus, the DLC's coming out, which
Yeah.
makes me super excited because that's another thing I'm excited to go to PAX and get some hands-on time with. I don't know if
Hmm.
they'll be hands-on with it, but I really hope they are because they're like, that's when we're revealing this stuff in its like in full.
Yeah.
And considering the fact that they've shown what one of the levels will be, I would be very surprised if they didn't have something set up where you could try the Messenger DLC, even if
Yeah.
it was just that like beach adventure storyline.
Yeah, which is fucking wild. Yeah, there's a weird '80s element to this, and I don't mean just in the art style, but in like the the music and there's a lot going on that's very '80s about this game that I didn't expect.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you got it, and I'm glad you enjoy it, and I hope that you continue to play it. I know that my hope is to platinum it after we finish here, so that I can take on Shikaro's Shadows Die Twice this weekend. So,
Nice.
so we'll see. But do you have anything else to say on the subject of video games? Because I'd like to tell you
S-
why I'm writing romantic comedies.
I just SteamWorld Heist. I kind of dropped that. I had jumped into that earlier, and it's just as engaging as SteamWorld Dig, despite the fact that it's like a completely different game. And I love this idea that they've created this world that these games can exist in that have like no real connection besides the fact that they take place in the same universe. Because like one is a move and shoot style like Worms style game. The other is a Dig Dug style adventure. Like it's crazy. So yeah. So just more on that probably later as I play through more of it. But I just want to put that out there that it is on sale right now, so people should go out and snag that game ASAP.
I'm also going to take this moment to say recommendation for like a hidden treasure regular Nintendo NES game. Captain Skyhawk
Nice.
is a game that I've owned since I was a kid, and I've like recently fallen back in love with it. And as I was playing it today, I just realized the controls are so good for what it is. It's like a flight simulator. It's a top-down flight simulator, and the
Mhm.
fact that you have such great control over that plane, it's incredible. And I love that game so much. So check out Captain
Cool.
Skyhawk if you have a regular Nintendo or a Nintendo Entertainment System. I don't know what you're supposed to call it.
OG, Nintendo OG.
I like Nintendo OG. All right. And speaking of OGs, you know what were weird in the 90s, CJ?
What? What were weird in the
Fucking
90s, Devon?
movies.
Nice.
Movies were weird in the 90s.
You were the king of segues. I want you to know that.
Oh, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
movies were very weird in the 90s, though. You're right.
And do you want to know why I've come to this groundbreaking, earth-shattering conclusion?
James Cameron.
Oh, I wish. I wish that right now I was going to say James Cameron.
Why? Why were movies weird in the 90s, Dev?
Okay, I know that this is going to get me some judgment. A longtime friend of me, Will, said I'm judging you right now when I revealed this to him. So, like, I am prepared for the slings and arrows. Last night, for the very first time in my life, I watched Good Will Hunting.
Wow. Yep. Moving on. Moving on from that statement. As somebody that has seen it in theaters twice since Robin Williams has passed away, I have no idea what to say to you.
And that is a weird fucking movie. It is such a product of the 90s. And it is such a product of who Matt Damon and Ben Affleck had worked with
Mm-hmm.
before that movie came along.
Sure.
It's like 25% Kevin Smith, 50% Richard Linklater, and then 25% Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. You think it's a weird one though, huh?
Well, you know, it's not that it's a weird one. It is the fact that, like, that movie started, and I'm like, oh, wow. The Wild West of Hollywood was the 1990s. In a way that did not become clear to me until I watched the opening scene of Good Will Hunting. Like that was the kind of stuff that was happening, and it was so innovative. Like, I would not be surprised if years from now, how many years are we removed from Citizen Kane? Like
Oh
80
God,
years? Like we're 80,
something.
like
Yeah,
something like 80. No, it's 41. So we'll say 80 years. It's close enough, right? It's actually what, 77? Math.
yeah,
Yeah.
something to that effect.
um the if when we're that removed from Goodwill Hunting, I would not be surprised if people credited it the same way that they credit Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
And that is huge praise for a movie that, like, knowing what I know about cinema now in 2019, I'm like, it's crazy that this movie got made. It's crazy that this movie got 7 Oscar nominations. It's crazy that this movie was nominated for Best Picture. Like,
Well, it's one of those rare times where everybody working on that movie was just there to make a good art piece movie. Knowing what we know now about the guys like Harvey Weinstein and all those other guys that were working on that particular movie. And I mean, even do it to the effect, like, I'm not I'm not putting Kevin Smith in the same category as Harvey Weinstein, but he is definitely not in the same position he was at that point in the 90s in Hollywood, right? Like, he's a very different artist now. So, like, it's a movie that could only happen in that moment, essentially, is what I'm saying, because all of the people that were involved made that movie in a way that could not be made nowadays, because nobody's in a position to make that movie that way now. You know what I mean?
and
Like,
yet
even
I
Matt
can
Damon and
see
Ben
the
Affleck.
fingerprints of that film on almost every piece of cinema today.
Yeah.
In like these weird ways where I'm like basic cliches of movies in 2019 were like innovative and new back then. And it's crazy. It's like that movie just starts, which is nuts. Like, movies didn't just start before that.
Yeah, yeah. No, usually there was exposition in films. This is very much the kind of movie that starts you in the middle of the like rising action, and then it feeds you exposition throughout the rest of the movie.
It was a crazy experience to watch Goodwill Hunting for the first time. And I think craziest of all is that all of the stuff that people like reference about that movie, like the jokes and like what Futurama parodies and all of that, even what
Hmm.
Kevin Smith parodies in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, that's
Right.
like literally the first 20 minutes of the film.
How about them apples
How
scene?
about
Is that what
them
you're talking about?
apples?
Yeah, yeah.
I found it rather elementary.
Mm.
The caramels line, which
Yeah.
like people used to say that to me. Why don't you just ask a girl out for caramels? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Now I know what the fuck they were talking about.
Still not the best line in that movie, though. The best line in that movie comes right at the very end when Robin Williams just looks at the camera and is just like, "Son of a bitch, stole my line."
Yes, yes, and I would 100% believe that was improv.
Oh, it definitely was. It's come out that sense that was just him, just being Robin Williams, and he steals that entire fucking movie in one line.
Yeah, dude, but like, and also Stellan Skarsgård is
Uh-huh.
a huge part of that movie who like no one ever brings up.
He's the other dad. I mean,
He's the-
he's the one of the most important parts of that movie.
I know, but like I didn't know he was in that movie, and like on the same level as Robin Williams.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a very Grecian formula to that film in which you have two sides of a debate taking place with these two older men throughout the entire movie, and you're just there's entire scenes that just cut away from anything to do with Will just to listen to them argue about it, like a salient like political point. Like, it's very, very, very wild, but he is just as important in that movie as Robin Williams is, because they're both arguing for either side of the debate. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's just nuts, and it's cool that I watched it. But there's also this thing. There's this feeling I sometimes get when I see pieces of media, and I know that it's narcissistic. I get that, but then I wonder. Like, I know that my parents saw Good Will Hunting when it was new. They went out to the theater to see it. And I feel like maybe on the car ride home, it was like, we can't let our sons see this movie ever.
You think the world's out to get you? Like, no, we can't
No,
let Devon.
not that the world's out to get me.
Then they
just
went to all
that,
your
like,
friends, and they said, "Let Devon see this movie." And I remember very distinctly the day they came to me, and I said, "I promise you on your son's grave that I will never let him watch this movie." And I failed them.
You understand when you say things like that, it lends way too much credence to that script you wrote in college about the guy whose parents are paying all of his friends to be his friends.
Hey man, we write what we know. We write our fears.
When you discuss secret cabals involving my parents, like, this is where the ideas come from. But it's one of those things where I feel like if I had seen that movie before I was in my 30s, it would have affected me on probably not a very good level.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta understand, like, that was the other reason why it was so big, is because it was hitting a lot of people like us, especially in our area. I mean, we can't deny it, right? South Boston being where we're from, like, it was really important to the people around us because of just that alone, right?
Yeah. Well,
and they were people that, I mean, they were talking
they
were talking to me, right? Like, that was the feeling in that movie when I saw it. It was like, this is one of the most personal experiences I've ever had with a film ever.
Yeah. So that's, but I think they're like, Devon can't have this thing. He can't think of his intelligence as a way to, like, be better than people. So the way that Will does.
So not only do you see yourself in that movie, you specifically see yourself as Will in that movie.
I see myself in a lot of characters in that movie. I'm not gonna lie. But I also think that might be it because of my age. Like, I can see myself in Stellan Skarsgård's Gerald character because of these accomplishments that I was told were so important for all of my life, and how, like, they're not really.
Well, and to see that somebody can come along and have that stuff not matter to them, and not being able to let the two exist in the world, that he can still be important and still be, like, smart and intelligent, and there can also be this kid that was just born with it. Like, he just can't allow himself to believe that both of those things are true, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and, like, in that, like, so I can see that whole thing. I can totally see the, like, stopping yourself from living because something that you had and meant so much to you has gone away. Like, I could see myself in more of it, but if I had seen it when it came out in 97, or even, like, in high school afterwards, I would have grasped onto the character of Will with such fervor and intensity that I don't think I'd be the Devon Decker that I am today. So if there was a secret cabal to get me to avoid seeing that film until I was old enough to handle it, thank you, secret cabal.
Yeah, this is wild, man. Like, I never knew you hadn't seen it. Did you know my freshman year monologue came from that movie?
No, because we weren't in freshman year together.
Well, no, so... but I did. Yeah, but we still knew each other.
Yeah, but I didn't watch you do a monologue.
We were in a specifically designed major where all anybody did was ever talk about what they were doing.
Let's be honest. You fucking did the happiest moment of my life for those 10 seconds when I'm walking from my car to your door and I knock and hope that you're not going to be there. I am doing Rosie O'Donnell's Boston accent from Smilf. I'm so sorry.
I love that monologue, but no, man. I did the monologue where he talks about getting the job with the government, and he talks about he says the whole thing about his friend having the piece of metal in his ass, and he can come back here and you get the blue plate special covered in oil.
Yeah. Yeah,
like, I love that monologue when he talks about why he doesn't want to join them. It's just it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's Yeah, no, that's good. That's a better monologue. I have a respect for you that I wouldn't have had you done the Ben Affleck monologue.
Chucky, though, is right up my alley. Like, when I was a kid, he was the one that I thought I was going to be, the guy that was going to be stuck at home. You know, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but, like, I never planned on going to college when I was growing up. You know, like it just wasn't in the cards for me. Like, not that the world was telling me I couldn't even go. It was just this thing in my head that I don't know. I had just figured that just wasn't going to be the path I was going to take. So when it came time to actually even apply for colleges, the girl I was with at the time was like, "You got to apply. You've got to apply. You've got to apply."
I was with at the time.
I'm not going to call anybody else.
I understand that they were the names are being concealed to protect the innocent, but it's just so funny to hear you refer to that person who I know like that. Like, it was like the thing where I'm like, I know exactly who he's fucking talking about. What? Oh, right. But we want to protect the innocent. It's not Quincy.
Well, and as the future, And as the future would dictate, yeah, as the future would dictate, there was a lot of things that particular relationship would force me to do that I hadn't expected nor wanted to do. Um, but uh, but essentially, I applied, right? So and I did the shitty thing where I applied to one really good school that I knew would have no interest in me. I applied to Emerson, and they were like, "We need you to do an audition," and I was like, "I'm not even coming for acting. I want to be a writer. I want to be a director." And they're like, "Everybody auditions," and I was like, "Well, I guess I'll do that," and then blew that audition like crazy. That was pretty fun. But then the other one was URI, right? And so URI got back to me, and on top of that, they offered me money, which was like, I wasn't ready for that, right? And so so I also walked into college that freshman year, not expecting to be in college, not expecting anything, and that movie having just come out in my life, right? So here I am with that film in my face and me not knowing what my future is going to be, surrounded by, for the first time, I thought more intelligent people than me. Slowly, I would realize a decade later that that's not how college works at all. But but this idea that like I was in a place where I could better myself, and so that movie was super effective to me, and seeing myself as Chucky in that movie, I started to question that, right? Because I was the one in college, and it was really weird. It was really wild having that movie in my life at that time.
Yeah, I can get that. And I think that might be one of the reasons why Will, when I told him that like I saw a lot of myself in that movie, he said, "Oh, Ben Affleck's character?" And it's like, no, actually, of all the characters, he was the one I didn't really see myself in, to be completely honest with you. And I feel bad saying that, but I'm glad that some people do see themselves in that character. But
Well,
I
no,
think,
I mean it's the idea that Chucky's the kind of person who is very much settled in,
right.
and like that's kind of the telling thing about him in the most of that movie is that he is just happy to let the world exist around him, and he's just going to work his way through whatever comes at him, right? Whereas he sees in Will potential to do more than that, which is what pisses him off so much that Will like squanders that
Squanders it,
potential,
yeah.
right? Right. So I don't think that you would ever see yourself as Chucky in that movie because specifically because of that. Because like you're not the kind of person that ever settles into anything. The second you get a job, you start thinking of ways to lose it.
That's that's very true. I have never been happier in a job than the one I am in right now. And I applied for a job last week. I like
I
because
mean that's the thing.
because
Is
that's what I am.
have
I always want to be moving forward like a shark.
there you go.
But yeah, so I'm glad that I've seen it, and as I've had time to ruminate on it, it affected me in a way. But I can definitely see if I had seen it when I was younger, exactly what you just said. Like I would have identified with a character who is super toxic, like regardless of, even with all the counseling and his Mrs. Robinson moment at the end of that movie. That's probably the wrong way to call it. Maybe his graduate move. He drives away into the sunset in a reddish car.
Yeah.
To get the
Oh
girl he
man.
loves. And he's probably gonna break a window. Sorry. But I think if I had seen it when I was younger, I would have been like, yeah, it's okay to be like that. Like, I can do it. In much the same way, because I want to give a shout out to this show, because this is the exact thought process I had. If
Nice.
I had ever watched an episode of The Practice, have you ever watched The Practice?
Yes. Hells yes.
I would be a fucking lawyer right now. If before I had like, back when I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, I mean, I still don't know what I want to do with my life, but like where I was starving for someone to tell me this is probably what you could be good at.
Yeah.
If I had seen, I mean, I've seen the pilot episode of The Practice like more than any other episode of that show. If I had seen that show when it was new, I would have become a defense attorney. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And I say that because I saw it at 31 and was like, I could still become a defense attorney, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
like nothing's stopping me from going into law school.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, except for the fact that I now know myself and I do not do well in an educational environment. Like, it doesn't work for me because I always think I'm smarter than the people in the room. See? Yeah, there's a reason why I see myself in Will fucking Hunting. I like, this is a hypothetical situation. And it's one of those things where, but if I were younger and I saw that, I'd be like, I'm going to be a defense attorney. and I would have. That was the time when I was able to put that like machismo and that pride aside because I knew I had to play the game. But I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, the game doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can still have a fulfilling life without playing by their fucking rules. This turned into a manifesto, and I'm sorry about that.
That's what happens after you watch Good Will Hunting. You don't have to apologize.
Oh, okay. Is this everybody understands?
Everything becomes a manifesto for about a week. Every conversation you have turns into a meaning of life conversation.
Oh, thank you, Sejohn. Thank you so much. Because I didn't know how to feel. But apparently, if that's the reaction to that movie...
Yeah. No, I'm glad you saw it. I'm very glad you saw it.
I also really love when they're like, you take a 40-minute train ride to get to work, and it's like, that's not bad in Boston. Like, what are you talking about? Or like, we should go up there. And it's like, you should go up to Harvard from Southie? That's like 20 minutes. What are you talking about?
They never leave Southie. They just hang out down there. Man, now you're making me want to go watch The Town again, honestly, above all other things.
I feel like I should watch The Town again because I watched it when everybody was up their own ass about that movie, and I feel like that definitely affected how I viewed that film.
Sure. For sure.
Yeah. Damn. See, this was good. This was a good conversation.
Glad to have it.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up in this wonderful episode?
No, if there's any other Devolver games that I wasn't thinking of, though, don't be afraid to hit me up on Twitter at Siege versus the World so that we can talk about them. Because, man, realizing how much I've fallen in love with that company over the last 10 years, I'm excited to deep dive back into their library.
And if you are willing to barter with me 4 documents regarding the identities of the secret cabal leading my life along the path it's on, feel free to reach out to me at Devon D. Decker. Yeah, you know what? That was a combination of words
Everything
that
becomes
I
manifesto.
never thought I was going to put together ever in my life.
Excellent.
Will, I know I disappointed you yesterday and know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. But until that time, please take us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.